The Indomitable raced toward Juan's flagship, its reactor building toward a carefully controlled overload. In the ship's engine room, Chief Engineer Jinwoo made final adjustments to the modified reactor core. "Captain," he reported over the comm, "the reactor is configured to appear as a new type of energy weapon. To their sensors, it will look like we're charging up some kind of super beam." "Will they try to adapt to it?" Captain So-young asked. "If their behavior follows the pattern we've observed, yes. They should attempt to absorb and counter the energy signature." On the bridge, the crew watched as the distance to the Vorthak flagship decreased rapidly. 500 kilometers, 400, 300. "Captain," Communications Officer Yunji said quietly, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Vorthak flagship." "Put it through." Juan appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the organic walls of his ship pulsed with increasing urgency. "Captain So-young," he said, "my sensors indicate you are preparing to ram my ship with some kind of energy weapon. This is your final attack?" "It is," So-young replied. "We've shown you everything we have. This is what humans do when we're cornered. You fight until the end regardless of the cost." "That's right." Juan was quiet for a moment. "In 112 years of conquest, no species has ever forced us to adapt this many times in a single battle. No enemy has ever lasted 12 hours against our fleet." "Is there a point to this conversation?" So-young asked. The distance was now down to 100 kilometers. "Yes," Juan said. "Captain, what are you running from?" So-young blinked in surprise. "What?" "Every species we have conquered was running from something. The Caltherians were fleeing economic collapse. The Zentak were escaping a plague. The Horthak were trying to find new resources as their star died." Juan leaned forward. "What disaster is humanity trying to escape?" "We're not running from anything," So-young said, confused. "This is our home system. We're defending it." For the first time since the battle began, Juan looked genuinely shocked. "You are defending? Not fleeing?" "Of course we're defending. This is where we live, but why would you fight so hard for one small colony world? Why not evacuate and find another planet?" So-young stared at the alien commander. "Because it's ours. Because people are living there. Because that's what humans do. We protect what matters to us." On the Vorthak flagship, something unprecedented happened. Juan felt doubt. For over a century, the Vorthak had consumed world after world, always encountering species that were running from some catastrophe. Races that had lost their homeworlds and were searching for new ones. Civilizations fleeing disasters or seeking resources. But humans were different. They weren't refugees or explorers or desperate survivors. They were simply defending their home. "War Prime," his tactical officer called out. "The human ship is within absorption range. Shall we prepare to counter their energy weapon?" Juan looked at the display showing the approaching human ship. Inside that vessel was a crew that had fought with more creativity and determination than he had ever encountered. They had shown him tactics he had never imagined, weapons he had never seen, and a way of thinking that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. And they were about to die defending a single small world that they could easily abandon. "War Prime," the tactical officer repeated. "Stand down," Juan ordered. "Sir?" "I said stand down. Do not attempt to adapt to their weapon." Aboard the Indomitable, So-young watched in amazement as the Vorthak bioships suddenly stopped their defensive preparations. The massive flagship directly ahead made no attempt to avoid the collision or counter the approaching energy signature. "Captain," Jinwoo's voice came over the comm. "The reactor is at critical. We need to either detonate now or shut it down." So-young looked at the screen where Juan still waited. "Why?" she asked him. "Because you have shown me something I thought was impossible," Juan replied. "A species that fights not because they are desperate, but because they choose to fight. A people who adapt not through biological evolution, but through thought and creativity. I still don't understand." "Captain, the Vorthak are running. We have been running for 300 years, consuming worlds to make our fleet strong enough to keep ahead of our pursuers. We thought that was the only way to survive, to become stronger by taking from others." Juan paused, looking directly at her. "But you have shown me that there might be another way. Instead of running and consuming, perhaps we could stand and defend. Instead of adapting only our biology, perhaps we could adapt our thinking." "Who are you running from?" So-young asked. "The Devourers," Juan said, and his voice carried fear. "They come from the Galactic core. They consume not just matter and energy but space itself. Where they pass, nothing can ever exist again. So Young felt a chill. How long until they reach this sector? Perhaps 50 of your years. Perhaps less. Juan straightened. Captain, I make you an offer. Instead of destroying each other, let us learn from each other. Your people's adaptability combined with our biological enhancement technology. You want an alliance? So Young said in disbelief. I want to learn how to fight like a human, Juan replied. And perhaps in exchange we can teach you how to make your ships grow stronger instead of weaker in battle. Jinwoo, So Young called out. Shut down the reactor overload. Aye, Captain. Reactor powering down. The Indomitable slowed to a stop just a few kilometers from the massive Vorthak flagship. For the first time in over a century, a Vorthak fleet had ended a battle without consuming anything. Captain, Tactical Officer Hyojin said quietly, we just made first contact with an alien species by nearly blowing them up. Strangest diplomatic meeting in human history, agreed Weapons Officer Minho. Over the next few hours, as both fleets remained in a tense but peaceful standoff, So Young and Juan began the delicate process of negotiation. It was complicated by the fact that both sides had been trying to kill each other just minutes before. The first thing we need, So Young said during one of their communications, is proof that you're serious about this alliance. Your fleet has been attacking human colonies. My orders were to consume all resistance in this sector, Juan replied. But I am War Prime. I can change those orders. And what about the rest of your people? Will they accept an alliance with a species they were trying to conquer? Juan considered this. When I return to the fleet command and tell them about human adaptability, about how you fought us to a standstill with inferior numbers and technology, I think they will be very interested in learning from you. There's another problem, So Young said. My government will need to know that humanity can trust the Vorthak. How do we know you won't just learn from us and then turn on us later? Because, Juan said, the Devourers cannot be defeated by any single species. If we are to have any hope of survival, we need to combine our strengths. Vorthak biological adaptation with human creative thinking. Biological adaptation? So Young mused. You mean you could make our ships heal themselves and grow stronger? Among other things, yes. And you could teach us to think beyond the patterns we have always followed. So Young looked around her damaged bridge at her exhausted crew. They had fought the impossible battle and somehow survived it. Now they were being offered something even more impossible, a chance to turn their greatest enemy into their strongest ally. I'll need to speak with Earth. Command, she said finally, and I will need to convince the other War Primes. Juan replied. This is going to be complicated, So Young said. Captain, Juan said, and she could hear something like humor in his voice. After fighting humans for 12 hours, I believe I am prepared for complicated. 6 months later, the first joint human Vorthak research station was established in the neutral zone between their territories. Captain So Young, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the station alongside War Prime Juan. The early days were difficult. Humans had trouble trusting beings who had been trying to consume them. Vorthak had trouble understanding beings who fought for principles rather than survival. But slowly, both species began to learn from each other. Human ships were redesigned with bioorganic components that could heal damage and adapt to new threats. Vorthak vessels were equipped with human-designed systems that could change tactics unpredictably. More importantly, both species learned new ways of thinking. Humans discovered the value of biological adaptation and long-term planning. Vorthak learned about creativity, improvisation, and fighting for something beyond mere survival. When the first scouts of the Devourer fleet finally arrived at the edge of human space 47 years later, they found something they had never encountered before. Two species that had combined their strengths rather than competing for resources. The Devourers had consumed countless civilizations across the galaxy, but they had never faced the combined adaptability of the Vorthak and the creative stubbornness of humanity. For the first time in eons, the Devourers encountered resistance they could not simply overwhelm. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time in 300 years, the Vorthak were not running, they were ready to make a stand. Captain Han Wool stared at the star charts on his screen. The UES Dauntless had been traveling through empty space for 3 weeks now. His mission was simple: map the outer regions of the galaxy and look for new worlds. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Captain, called So Young from her science station.
I'm getting some strange readings from the Kepler 442 system.
Hanwol looked up. He knew that system. Everyone did. It was marked as a dead zone on all the maps. The Galactic Council had put warning signs all around it 200 years ago. Nobody was supposed to go there. What kind of readings? Hanwol asked. So Young frowned at her instruments. Energy signatures. Lots of them. Like someone is still alive down there. The bridge went quiet. Taemin, the communications officer, looked nervous. Sir, the council orders say we should stay away from that system. It's quarantined. Hanwol walked over to So Young's station. The readings were clear. Something was definitely alive in that system. Something big. Set course for Kepler 442, Hanwol said. Sir? Taemin's voice cracked a little. You heard me. If someone needs help, we help them. That's what humans do. The ship turned toward the forbidden system. As they got closer, So Young's readings got stronger. Finally, they could see the planet on their main screen. It looked terrible. The surface was brown and cracked. Huge storms covered most of it. The star above it was dying, turning red and swollen. Scanning for life signs, So Young reported. I'm reading millions of them. They're all underground. Hanwol felt his heart speed up. Millions of beings were down there, hiding under the surface of a dying world. Why had the council told everyone to stay away? Take us down, he ordered. Find a safe place to land. The Dauntless descended through the thick atmosphere. Lightning struck their shields again and again. Finally, they found a flat area near what looked like a metal structure sticking up from the ground. That's some kind of entrance, So Young said. The life signs are strongest right below us. Hanwol gathered his away team. Besides So Young, he brought Taemin and 2 security officers. They put on their environmental suits and walked toward the metal structure. The entrance was covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. As they approached, the symbols pulsed brighter. Then slowly the entrance opened. Should we go in? Asked one of the security officers. Hanwol nodded. We came this far. They walked down a long tunnel that curved deep into the ground. The walls were smooth and covered with more glowing symbols. The air was breathable according to their scanners. After walking for 10 minutes, they reached a huge underground chamber. Hanwol gasped. The space was enormous, filled with buildings that looked like they were made of crystal. Thousands of beings moved between the buildings, but these weren't like any aliens Hanwol had ever seen. They were tall and thin with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through them in patterns that changed as they walked. When they saw the humans, they stopped and stared. One of them approached. It was taller than the others, with crystal that looked older and more complex. When it spoke, its whole body lit up with swirling colors. I am Kira, the being said in perfect English. We have been waiting for someone to come. Hanwol stepped forward. I'm Captain Hanwol of the Earthship Dauntless. We detected life signs and came to investigate. Kira's body pulsed with what looked like sadness. You are human, yes? We have heard of your people. You are young but brave. Who are you? What is this place? We are the Velothi, Kira explained. This was once our great city of Lumenspire. Now it is all that remains of our civilization. A younger Velothi approached them. I am Bin. I can help translate if Elder Kira's words are unclear. Kira gestured for them to follow. She led them through the crystal city. As they walked, Hanwol saw that many of the buildings were dark. Some had collapsed completely. The Velothi they passed looked weak and tired. What happened here? So Young asked. Our star is dying, Kira said. It has been dying for 300 years. We asked the other species in the galaxy for help. They said no. Why would they say no? Hanwol couldn't understand it. Bin answered this time. They said we were not worth saving. They said our race was too old, too slow to change. They called us evolutionary dead ends. Taemin shook his head. That's horrible. 200 years ago, the Galactic Council declared our system quarantined, Kira continued. They said it was for everyone's safety. But really, they just wanted to forget about us. They reached a central plaza where hundreds of Velothi had gathered. They all looked at the humans with hope in their crystal eyes. How many of you are there? Hanwol asked. 1 million, maybe more, Kira said. We live in 7 cities like this one. All underground. All slowly dying as our technology fails. So Young was scanning with her instruments. Your technology is incredible. It's all based on quantum crystal matrices. This is centuries ahead of anything we have. It was, Bin said sadly. But we can't maintain it anymore. We need rare minerals that we used to trade for. Since the quarantine, we have been cut off from everything. Han Wol felt anger building in his chest. How could the galaxy just abandon these people? How could they let an entire species die? Elder Kira, he said formally. Would you accept help from humanity? Kira's entire body flashed bright white. You would help us? Even though the Council forbids it? The Council can go to hell, Han Wol said firmly. Nobody deserves to die like this. Taemin looked worried. Captain, if we interfere with a quarantine zone, Earth could face serious consequences. Han Wol looked around at the dying city, at the hope in the Velothi faces. Then he looked at his communications officer. Taemin, send an encrypted message to Fleet Command. Tell them we found a species in need of immediate humanitarian assistance. Tell them the Galactic Council has been lying about this system. Sir, the Council will... Let me worry about the Council. Han Wol cut him off. Right now, these people need our help. Send the message. As Taemin reluctantly started composing the message, Kira approached Han Wol. Her crystal body pulsed with warm colors. In all our long history, she said, no species has ever offered to help us without asking for something in return. Why would humans do this? Han Wol thought about it for a moment. Then he smiled. Because it's the right thing to do, and because nobody should have to face extinction alone. Far above them, the dying star pulsed weakly in the dark sky, counting down the days until it would finally die and take the planet with it. President Ye Jin stood at the podium in the United Earth Assembly Hall. Representatives from every human colony and nation filled the seats before her. The weight of her decision pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. Fellow humans, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We face a choice that will define who we are as a species. She told them about the Velothi, about their dying world and the galaxy's refusal to help, about the threats from the Galactic Council. When she finished, the hall was silent. The Council has made their position clear, Ye Jin continued. If we help the Velothi, we risk everything. Our trade agreements, our protection treaties, our place in galactic civilization. They expect us to choose our own safety over the lives of innocent beings. She paused and looked out at the assembled representatives, but I believe that the measure of a civilization is not how powerful it becomes, but how it treats those who cannot help themselves. I believe that if we abandon the Velothi to save ourselves, we stop being human. The applause started slowly, then built into a roar that shook the building. Every representative was on their feet. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would help the Velothi no matter the cost. Within hours, Operation Stellar Bridge was in motion. Fleet Admiral Seok Jin took command of the largest humanitarian mission in human history. Every available ship was called into service. How many ships do we have? Admiral Ji Hoon asked during the briefing. 47 military vessels, 63 civilian transports, and 18 medical ships, Seok Jin replied. It's not enough to evacuate 1 million beings, but it's what we have. Then we'll make it work, Dr. Haiwan said firmly. She was leading the medical team. The Velothi have been dying slowly for 200 years. We're not going to let them die on our watch. The first challenge was understanding Velothi biology well enough to keep them alive during transport. Chief Engineer Jae Sung worked around the clock to modify human ships. Their bodies need specific light frequencies to survive, he explained to his team. Without it, their crystal structure breaks down and they die. Can we provide it? Asked Engineer Park. We're going to have to. I'm installing quantum light generators in every ship. It's experimental technology, but it should work. Meanwhile, Captain Subin was preparing ground teams for the evacuation. She had studied every piece of data about Velethos and the Velothi cities. The planet is unstable, she told her teams. Earthquakes, storms, equipment failures. We'll be working in dangerous conditions. What about the Velothi themselves? Asked Lieutenant Ko. They're cooperative, but they've been isolated for 200 years. Some of them have never seen the surface of their planet, let alone the stars. This is going to be traumatic for them. The fleet arrived at Velethos 3 weeks later. The planet looked even worse than in the reports. The dying star had turned angry red, and the surface was racked with constant storms. Captain Han Wol met the fleet in orbit. His ship, the Dauntless, had been providing supplies to the Velothi while waiting for help to arrive. How are they holding up? Admiral Seok Jin asked. Barely, Han Wol replied. 2 of their cities have already been abandoned due to power failures. We're down to about 800,000 survivors. The evacuation began immediately. Human shuttles descended through the violent atmosphere, while Velothi guides led them to the underground cities. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable. Nim, a young Velothi engineer, worked with engineer Min Jun to coordinate the evacuation of the largest city. Kala, a Velothi teacher, helped Dr. Haiwan understand Velothi medical needs. Your people are very kind, Kayla told the doctor as they worked together in a makeshift clinic. We're just doing what anyone should do, Dr. Haiwan replied. No, Kayla said, her crystal body pulsing with soft colors. We sent messages to 47 different species over the past 2 centuries. 46 ignored us completely. One sent back a message saying we deserve to die for being weak. Dr. Haiwan felt anger flash through her. Well, they were wrong. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly until the Corvan fleet arrived. War Commander Thex Ral brought 12 warships into the system. They took position between the human fleet and the planet, claiming they were there to monitor the situation. Admiral Seok Jin, came Thex Ral's voice over the communications channel. You are in violation of Galactic Council directives. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. We are conducting a humanitarian rescue mission, Seok Jin replied calmly. We're not leaving without the Velothi. Then, you will be considered hostile to galactic peace. The Corvan ships began what they called patrol patterns, but which looked suspiciously like attack formations. Worse, they kept moving into the flight paths of human shuttles, forcing dangerous course corrections. They're trying to cause accidents, Captain Han Wool reported, making our shuttles waste fuel on evasive maneuvers. Commander Yu Jin was leading the escort fighters. She had served in 3 wars and knew aggressive behavior when she saw it. Admiral, she requested, permission to establish defensive perimeter. Granted, Seok Jin replied, but do not fire unless fired upon. The tension in space was matched by urgency on the planet's surface. Captain Subin was leading the evacuation of the deepest city when the power grid began failing. The quantum matrix is destabilizing, Nim reported, her crystal body flickering with alarm colors. If it fails completely, the city will collapse. How long do we have? Subin asked. Maybe 6 hours, maybe less. There were still 40,000 Velothi in that city. 6 hours wasn't enough time to get them all out. Engineer Dongwu volunteered to go deeper into the city with a team of technicians. If we can jury-rig our power systems to their quantum matrix, we might be able to stabilize it. It's dangerous, Subin warned. Human technology isn't compatible with theirs. You could get killed. So could 40,000 Velothi if we don't try, Dongwu replied. While the engineers worked to save the city, Dr. Yunyang was making a different kind of breakthrough. Working with a Velothi scientist named Zol, she had found a way to merge human and Velothi technology. Look at this, she said excitedly to Admiral Seok Jin over the communication link. If we combine our quantum computers with their biocrystal networks, we get something completely new. Something better than either of us could make alone. Can it help with the evacuation? More than that. It could revolutionize everything. Medicine, energy production, space travel. The possibilities are endless. As if to prove her point, the hybrid system they had created solved the power crisis in the failing city. The quantum matrix stabilized, giving them the time they needed to complete the evacuation. But the good news was overshadowed by reports from human colonies. Strange accidents were happening throughout human space. Defense systems failing, communications going down, supply ships losing their way. It's sabotage, Intelligence Director 1 reported to President Ye Jin. The Galactic Council is trying to pressure us into abandoning the rescue. How bad is it? Ye Jin asked. Bad. If this continues, our outer colonies could be defenseless within weeks. Ye Jin looked at the reports, then at the images coming back from Velithos, human and Velothi working together, saving lives, creating something new and beautiful. Continue the evacuation, she ordered, whatever the cost. In space above Velithos, the standoff continued. The Corvan ships grew more aggressive, but Commander Yujin and her pilots matched them move for move. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they flew with a creativity and unpredictability that frustrated the rigid Corvan tactics. Pilot Chang Min pulled off a maneuver that should have been impossible, threading his fighter between 2 Corvan destroyers to reach a stranded shuttle. How did you do that? His wingman asked. I didn't think about it, Chang Min replied. I just felt what the ship needed to do. It was becoming clear that while the Corvins had superior technology, humans had something else. They had intuition, creativity, and the ability to adapt on the fly. On the planet's surface, the final city was being evacuated when long-range sensors detected something terrifying. The star's collapse was accelerating. What they thought would happen over weeks was now going to happen in days. All teams, priority evacuation, Admiral Seok Jin ordered. We're almost out of time. The race against stellar death had begun. The alarms were deafening in the deepest Velathi city. Red warning lights flashed from every crystal surface as the ancient power core began its final shutdown. Engineer Dongwu stared at the readings on his portable scanner and felt his heart sink. How bad is it? Captain Subin asked through the communication link. Worse than we thought, Dongwu replied. The quantum crystal matrix is cascading into complete failure. When it goes, it will take the entire city structure with it. Around them, 200,000 Velathi moved through the crystal corridors with calm dignity. Even facing death, they helped each other, shared their remaining food, and sang soft harmonies that made the crystal walls glow with peaceful colors. How long do we have? Subin pressed. Dongwu checked his instruments again. 4 hours. Maybe less, it wasn't enough time. Even with every shuttle working at maximum capacity, they could only evacuate half the city before the collapse. The numbers were simple and brutal. Sir, said Technician Lee, one of Dongwu's team members, there might be a way. Tell me. If we hook our portable fusion reactor directly into their quantum matrix, we might be able to restart the core. Buy ourselves more time. Dongwu looked at the massive crystal structure that powered the city. It was beautiful and alien, pulsing with fading light. Our technology isn't compatible with theirs. The energy feedback could kill anyone in the core chamber, only if someone stays to manually regulate the power flow. Lee said quietly. The implications hung in the air between them. Someone would have to stay behind, alone in the core chamber, to keep the fusion reactor stable while the quantum matrix restarted. The energy feedback would be lethal within minutes. I'll do it, Dongwu said. Sir, no. I suggested it. I should. You have a family back on Earth, Dongwu interrupted. I don't. Besides, I know these systems better than anyone. Captain Subin's voice crackled over the radio. Dongwu, what's your status? We have a plan, Captain. Start the evacuation. We'll buy you the time you need. High above the planet, the space battle was escalating. War Commander Thex Ral had grown tired of the standoff. His ships began actively blocking human shuttles, forcing them to take longer, more dangerous routes through the storm-racked atmosphere. Commander Yu Jin watched a Corvin destroyer move directly into the path of a medical shuttle carrying wounded Velathi. The shuttle pilot Jung-Soo had to make a sharp turn that sent his ship spinning toward the planet's surface. That's enough, Yu Jin said grimly. She opened a channel to all human fighters. All wings form up. We're going to show these bullies how humans fight. The human fighters moved as one, sweeping toward the Corvin formation. They didn't have the firepower to win a direct fight, but they didn't need to win. They just needed to create enough chaos to keep the evacuation running. Pilot Chang Min dove his fighter between two Corvin ships, forcing them to break formation to avoid collision. The Corvin pilots cursed in their harsh language, but they couldn't ignore a ship heading straight for them. You humans are insane, War Commander Thex Ral bellowed over the communication channel. You're just figuring that out now? Yu Jin replied, spinning her fighter in a spiral that no sane pilot would attempt. The Corvin ships were faster and more heavily armed, but they fought like machines, following predictable patterns. The humans fought like artists, each pilot improvising based on instinct and emotion. It was chaos, but it was effective chaos. Down in the Crystal City, Dongwu and his team had reached the core chamber. The room was vast, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. At the center, a massive crystal formation pulsed with dying light. It's beautiful, whispered Technician Park. And dangerous, Dongwu added. Everyone except Lee needs to evacuate now. We can handle the rest. Sir, we should all stay. Better chance of success with more hands. Dongwu shook his head firmly. This isn't a debate. Get out. That's an order. Reluctantly, the other technicians left. Dongwu and Lee began setting up the fusion reactor, connecting human technology to alien crystal with jury-rigged cables and adapters. Will this actually work? Lee asked. Honestly? I have no idea, but we have to try. Nearby, Elder Kira approached them. Her ancient crystal body was dim with exhaustion, but she moved with dignity. Human engineer, she said. We understand what you are attempting, and we understand the cost. Ma'am, you should be evacuating with the others. I am the eldest of my people in this city. I will not abandon it while others still remain. Kira's body pulsed with sad colors. But I cannot ask you to die for us. Dongwu looked up from his work. You're not asking. We're offering. That's what humans do. Why? Kira's question was simple but profound. Lee answered while connecting another cable. Because every life has value. Because no one should die alone. Because it's the right thing to do. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then her body began to glow with warm golden light. In all our long history, we have never encountered beings like you. You give without asking for anything in return. We get plenty in return, Dongwu said with a smile. We get to know that we helped. The fusion reactor was ready. Dongwu sent Lee away and prepared to make the connection that would either save the city or kill him trying. Dongwu, Captain Subin's voice came over the radio. Evacuation is at 60%. We need another 2 hours. You'll get it, Dongwu promised. He activated the fusion reactor. The crystal matrix responded immediately. Power flowed through the ancient structures, bringing light back to the dying city. But the energy feedback was intense. Dongwu felt his environmental suit's radiation alarm screaming as deadly energies washed over him. Meanwhile, Dr. Yun Young was having her own breakthrough in a different part of the city. Working with Velothi scientist Zol, she had been exploring the hybrid technology they had discovered. Look at this data pattern, Zol said, her crystalline fingers dancing over the interface. When we combine our biocrystal networks with your quantum computers, the processing power increases exponentially. Yun Young stared at the readings. This isn't just addition. It's multiplication. Our technologies don't just work together. They make each other better. What does this mean for the evacuation? It means we can calculate better flight paths through the storms, more efficient power distribution for the ships, better life support systems. Yun Young's excitement was growing. Zol, this could change everything. Together they implemented the hybrid system across the human fleet. Almost immediately, shuttle efficiency improved by 30%. Ships that had been struggling with the harsh atmospheric conditions suddenly found optimal flight paths through the storms. How did you do that? Admiral Seok Jin asked when Yun Young reported the improvements. We're not just rescuing the Velothi, she replied. We're learning from them. This partnership is making us both stronger. The improvements came just in time. Sensors detected that the star's collapse was accelerating even faster than predicted. What they thought were days was now measured in hours. All ships maximum evacuation speed, Admiral Seok Jin ordered. We're running out of time. In the core chamber, Dongwu was dying. The radiation was cooking him from the inside. But he held his position at the manual controls. Every few minutes he had to adjust the power flow to keep the fusion reactor stable. Status report, Subin called. Core is stable, Dongwu replied, though his voice was getting weaker. How's the evacuation? 80% complete. We need 1 more hour. Dongwu looked at his radiation meter. He didn't have an hour. He had maybe 20 minutes before the exposure killed him. But maybe that would be enough. Elder Kira had refused to evacuate. She stood in the core chamber, watching the human sacrifice himself for her people. Why do you stay? Dongwu asked during a brief break between power adjustments. Someone should witness this, Kira replied. Someone should remember that a human died to save Velothi lives. Your name will be remembered in our histories for as long as our species survives. Dongwu Kim, he said weakly, in case you need the full name for the history books. Dongwu Kim, Kira repeated, her crystal body glowing with reverent colors. Hero of the Velothi. Above them, the final evacuations were proceeding. But long-range sensors had detected something that filled everyone with dread. The star wasn't just going to collapse. It was going to go supernova. When that happened, everything in the system would be destroyed instantly. And according to the latest calculations, they had less than 6 hours before it happened. The race against stellar death had become a sprint toward impossible odds. The emergency broadcast reached every human ship in 3 star systems at once. Admiral Seok Jin's voice was calm but urgent. All human vessels, all civilian ships, all private craft. We need immediate assistance at the Kepler 442 system. This is not a military order. This is a humanitarian emergency. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, ships began arriving from across human space. Merchant vessels commanded by captains like Kyung-ho, dropped their cargo and came running. Research ships led by scientists like In Young abandoned their experiments. Even luxury liners carrying tourists changed course to help. How many ships do we have now? Admiral Seok Jin asked his communications officer. 217, sir, and more arriving every hour. Captain Hanwol watched the fleet grow with amazement. These weren't military ships following orders. These were humans who had heard that people needed help and came without being asked. The Corvan war commander Thexrel was equally amazed, but for different reasons. Admiral, he called over the communication channel, you cannot possibly evacuate all these aliens. Why do you persist in this futile gesture? Because they're not aliens to us anymore, Seok Jin replied. They're neighbors, and humans don't abandon their neighbors. On the planet's surface, the final evacuation was a desperate race against time. The star's collapse was accelerating beyond all predictions. What had been 6 hours was now 3, then 2, then less. In the deepest city, Engineer Dongwu was barely conscious. The radiation had cooked his internal organs, but he still held his position at the manual controls. Elder Kira stood beside him, her crystal body dim with grief. The evacuation is complete, Captain Subin reported over the radio. Dongwu, you can come up now. Dongwu tried to respond, but only managed a weak cough. Blood speckled his helmet visor. I don't think I can make it up, he whispered. Then we're coming down to get you, Subin said firmly. No. Too dangerous. The core could destabilize if I leave the controls. Kira moved closer to the human engineer. Dongwu Kim, there is something I must tell you. The quantum matrix is now stable. Your sacrifice has succeeded. You can leave. But if I go and it failed, it will not fail. Your hybrid system with Dr. Yun Young has made it stronger than it ever was. Kira's body pulsed with warm colors. You have given us not just our lives, but a better future. Now let us give you yours. 2 hours later, every human ship was loaded beyond capacity. The Velothi had been distributed throughout the fleet, with human families voluntarily giving up their quarters to house refugees. The cooperation between the species was remarkable. Dr. Hai Wan worked with Velothi healers to treat both human and alien injuries. She discovered that Velothi biocrystal technology could accelerate human healing, while human medical knowledge helped optimize Velothi recovery. We're better together, she reported to Admiral Seok Jin. Our medical techniques complement each other perfectly. The same was true throughout the fleet. Human engineers working with Velothi technicians improved ship efficiency. Velothi quantum biology combined with human creativity produced innovations neither species could achieve alone. But they weren't safe yet. The star was hours away from supernova, and some of the older ships couldn't achieve the speeds needed to escape the blast radius. That's when the Velothi made their own sacrifice. Elder Kira, now aboard the human flagship, approached Admiral Seok Jin with a proposal that stunned everyone. Admiral, many of our eldest have decided to remain behind. We will maintain the planetary shield generators to give your slower ships more time to escape. Absolutely not, Seok Jin said immediately. We didn't come all this way to leave people behind. You do not understand, Kira replied patiently. We are old. We have lived full lives. The young ones? The ones with futures ahead of them, they are safe. That is what matters. No, Captain Hanwol said, joining the conversation. That's not how humans work. Nobody gets left behind. Not on our watch. Hanwol had an idea. It was dangerous and probably stupid, but it might work. Elder Kira, can your people survive in the quantum crystal matrices on our ships? For a short time, yes. But why do you ask? Because I'm going back for your people. Admiral Seok Jin stared at him. Captain, the star will go supernova in less than 2 hours. Then I better hurry. Hanwol took the Dauntless back to the planet at maximum speed. The ship's quantum crystal hybrid systems, developed by Dr. Yun Young and scientist Zol, allowed him to move faster than any ship should be able to. He reached the planet with 30 minutes to spare. The Velothi elders were waiting at the shield generators, prepared to die to save others. Change of plans, Hanwol announced as his ship landed. We're all going home. Elder Kira's body flashed with surprise. Captain, you should not have returned. You will not have time to escape. Watch me, Hanwol said with a grin. The Dauntless lifted off with the final group of Velothi, just as the star began its final collapse. The ship's hybrid systems pushed beyond all safety limits as Hanwol tried to outrun stellar death itself. Captain, So Young called from her station, The star is going supernova now. Behind them, the dying star exploded with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. The shockwave raced outward at a significant fraction of light speed, vaporizing everything in its path. But the Dauntless had the best technology two species could create working together. The ship rode the edge of the blast wave like a surfer riding a tsunami, using the explosion's own energy to boost their speed. "We're going to make it," Han Wol said with relief. And they did. The entire human fleet, carrying every single Velothi survivor, escaped the destruction of their homeworld. The aftermath of the rescue sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. The Galactic Council's threats of sanctions against humanity backfired spectacularly. Younger species, inspired by humanity's example, began questioning their own governments. The Corvan Empire found itself facing rebellions in 17 systems. Species that had been oppressed for centuries pointed to humanity's example and asked why their government wouldn't help people in need. The Zelen, collectives' trade networks began to fragment as member species, demanded ethical considerations in their policies. Many systems began trading directly with humanity instead. Even the Naxari Commonwealth faced internal pressure as their own people questioned the wisdom of abandoning entire species to extinction. But the biggest changes were happening in human space. The Velothi, scattered across dozens of human worlds, began sharing their knowledge freely. The quantum biotechnology revolution transformed everything. Dr. Sang-Ho, working with Velothi researcher Fel, developed medical treatments that could heal injuries in hours instead of weeks. Engineer Min Jun and scientist Zol created energy systems that could power entire cities with no pollution. Most importantly, the two species were learning from each other on a deeper level. The Velothi's collective consciousness helped humans understand cooperation on a galactic scale. Human individuality and creativity inspired Velothi to explore new possibilities. A year later, construction began on New Velothos, a joint human-Velothi colony in the Alpha Centauri system. The world was designed using principles from both species: sustainable Velothi biocrystal architecture, powered by human fusion technology. Ambassador Mi Kyung and Velothi speaker Tor stood before the reformed Galactic Council to present their new alliance. The council chamber looked different now. Many of the old powers had been replaced by younger, more progressive governments. "Honored delegates," Mi Kyung began, "we come before you today not as separate species, but as partners in a new kind of civilization." Speaker Tor's crystal body pulsed with confident colors. "We have learned that strength comes not from abandoning those who are different, but from embracing them. Not from competition, but from cooperation." The new council had learned its lessons. They voted unanimously to establish the Galactic Humanitarian Protocol, ensuring that no species would ever again be abandoned to extinction. The final scene took place on New Velothos 5 years later. In a crystal garden that glowed with bioluminescent beauty, human children played with young Velothi. The two species had become so integrated that the children switched effortlessly between human speech and Velothi light patterns. Jun Seo, a 10-year-old human boy, was showing his friend Lim, a young Velothi, how to throw a ball. Lim's crystalline body shifted colors with excitement each time he successfully caught it. "Why did your people save us?" Lim asked in perfectly clear English. Jun Seo thought about it seriously, the way children do when asked important questions. "Because that's what families do," he said finally. "They help each other." Lim's body glowed bright gold with happiness. "So we're family now?" "Yeah," Jun Seo grinned. "We're family." Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from power or technology, but from simply refusing to let others suffer alone. And sometimes the youngest species in the galaxy can teach the oldest ones what it truly means to be civilized. The Velothi were no longer the forgotten race. They were part of something new, something better. They were part of the human family, and the human family never forgot its own.